Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce webinar. My name is Sonny Rana. I am the account manager here at Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce. The webinar will be with Paul Glynn, who I'm glad to say has kindly agreed to host the webinar today on doing business in uncertain times from Sandler Training. Interesting times, I'm sure everyone will agree that everyone's going through currently. So I'm looking forward very much to sort of hearing how Paul give us some sort of advice, hints and tips on how to do some, I guess, sort of sales in these fun and interesting times. Over to you, Paul.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Sonny. So yes, we're going to be looking at how on earth can we get sales in this current environment. Sales is a tricky thing to be doing at the best of times, and now of course it's so much more difficult perhaps. One of the things that we've been finding is that really what this whole situation, this whole new environment is doing is making sure that we have to be so much better at all the things we should be doing right now. Hopefully by the end of the session you understand what it is I'm saying. But if we can actually well, this is not moving on. This is good. It was a moment ago. Good. So but we're going to start with Sandler Rule number 27. There are possibly 200 plus rules, 49 famous Sandler rules. This is number 27, and it states that you can't sell anybody anything. Now, if you're in sales, that might not sound like some good news, and certainly if you've got salespeople, it doesn't sound like good news either. But in actual fact, it's very, very good news, because what we're really talking about is you can't sell anybody anything until they find that they need it. And once they have discovered that they want it, then there's no selling really to be done, if you think about it. So I'm going to quick look at who you are, who I am, and what's in a name. Who you are, I'm guessing you're either a small business that is perhaps finding life a bit strange in these times, or you're working for an organization and you're being asked to do pretty much the impossible, maybe in the sense of get more business because perhaps some of the clients that the organization has had have had to perhaps pull back a little bit. So in actual fact, we've not only got to get the normal new business, we've got to sort of also make up for the bit that's gone a bit quiet as well. So, okay, so that's who you are. Who am I? I'm basically from Sandler. It's a franchise that's been going for many years. We've actually been here in the UK for 15 years, and I've been with the organization for 10. Before that, I was a sales manager, a salesperson. I've even actually been a buyer as well. And that's kind of important, as we will see a bit later on. But what's in a name? What I mean by that is, I'm guessing that probably nobody watching this, either live or later on, actually has too often the word salesperson on their business card. And I've got to ask you why that might be. Why have we got other words in there? Maybe business development, or even direct, or account manager, or account director, or anything other than the word salesperson. And the reason is because the term salesperson has got so much bad resonance about it. It smacks of somebody that's pushy and slimy almost, and perhaps untrustworthy, and somebody you don't really want to be talking to. And certainly given this current environment, that's the last person you want to be talking to. And therefore, it's the very last person we want to come across as. So we're going to have to look at perhaps doing things slightly differently so that we are coming across in a completely different way to the ways perhaps we have been in the past. So I've got to ask you, what's the one thing you're struggling with right now? The thing that I'm hearing an awful lot of is, well, we would actually like to have more leads, please, Paul. You know, just finding some people to talk to. I'm also hearing some organizations say, do you know what, just having anybody to sell to would be kind of good right now. But others are actually telling me, well, that's not entirely true, because in actual fact, we're having a fantastic time from the point of view of sales. For some organizations, they're doing an enormous amount of business right now. Now that might sound a bit strange, but if you think about it, depending upon the kind of industry you're in, that might actually make an awful lot of sense. For example, you know, if you're offering teleconferencing right now, you're going to be quite in demand. But even those organizations that perhaps are in manufacturing, you think, well, no, hang on, everything's on shutdown, right? Everything's on hold. No sales whatsoever. One of my clients recently told me they're actually having a boom time right now. That's simply because, although they can't deliver things right now, but they are getting the orders in right now. So in other words, it is possible to do business and do good business, not just for a little bit when normality returns, but also right now too. So let's see what we can do. What are the things you're struggling with? I want you to just jot those down, and hopefully by the end of the session, you'll look back and think, well, actually, maybe some of the solution is starting to become a bit more apparent. So I'm going to ask you, in effect, are you tired of chasing buyers and wasting time and stalls and objections and worrying about price, working too hard? I mean, apparently we've got lots of time on our hands right now. We're all working from home, but in actual fact, look, we're probably working harder than we've ever worked. So are you ready to take control of the sale? Are you ready to qualify your buyers and sell more easily and have fun, perhaps, and be treated like the professional that you are? So what are some of your challenges? My guess is it's going to be these sort of things, like people saying, I'll think it over, or we really do not want to be talking about this right now. The project has gone on hold. There's no way we can be spending any money right now. But if we're determined to do something about that, then I'm going to ask you, what is your commitment to actually doing something about it? And what difference is it going to make to you if you were more in control of your sales environment, if you're more in control of what it is that's going to happen to you? But also, more importantly, what is your commitment to doing that? And my presentation has frozen, which is good. What's that costing you? That's to say, what's the difference it's going to make not only to your organization, but to yourself? And then what is your commitment? Is it something that's just kind of important because you've been asked to do it? Or is it really going to make a difference to your standard of living and your feeling of self-worth and your promotion? And I mean, are you able to come in and be the real difference for your organization right now and really make the difference? If that's the case, then I guess your commitment is kind of quite high right now. So if only, oh my gosh, if only, and I don't know, if our buyers going to get easier to deal with right now? Are they going to treat you better because they're going to be empathizing with you because we're all in the same boat? We're all this COVID coronavirus boat? I don't think so, unfortunately. And they might sound like they're going to be nicer to you, but I'm not sure. And are we or our salespeople going to get better at selling and dealing with stalls and objections just naturally? I don't think that's going to happen either. We really do need to work on these things, because buyers are still going to be buyers. Salespeople are still going to be salespeople. So what can we do to change our world a little bit? We want us to leave the session assured that something can change for you. And it really boils down to having equal business stature. If we can come across as being the professional, the trusted advisor, rather than a salesperson, it's an awful lot easier for people to buy from you. And that's really what we want to be the situation. We want people to buy from us rather than having to sell anything, right? That would be ideal. After all, you can't sell anybody anything, remember, Rule 27. The only thing is, if we don't do anything about it, failure to implement is the only reason why things are going to not change. So that's what I want you to do at the end of the session. At least go away with something that's actually going to be different, that's going to change. So I'm going to ask, why do we need to have systems and processes? My first question, therefore, around that is sales, let's think about it, is it an art or a science? For many people, they'll say it's an art, it's a bit of a dark art, but what's more. But we'd like it to be more scientific. We'd like it to be more in control, in effect. We'd like to have some sort of process that we can hold ourselves and our people to. Just I'm not entirely sure what that should be. looking at the sales funnel, this really does highlight why it's important to have some sort of really strong process, now more than any other time. At the end of the day, there's going to be a limited number of people we can get through to right now, more limited than before, but we're working at full pace. So if we are wanting to get more business right now to make up for that gap that I mentioned, because people are doing less business with us at the moment, and we also still want to develop the business going forward, or we want to be ready for the business to go forward when some sort of normality returns, then something has to happen actually in the sales funnel itself. We actually have to do something different in order to make sure we are converting more of those good prospects into actual clients, because we can't be working any harder than we are right now. Okay, so let's have a look at the typical sales process. The first step would be, I guess, well, I mean, you're not going to necessarily just walk into someone's office or in effect someone's screen and immediately go into some sort of sales pitch, or at least I hope you don't, right? The very first part of the sales process is at least to ask some questions to find out what's the problem, some sort of needs analysis. That's what we need, isn't it? We need to figure out what it is that they actually want from us, how we can actually help, maybe the kind of things that we might help with. At that point, we are then going to do our presentation. We're going to really show them what it is we can do to help. They've got these major issues that they've told us about. We're now going to present our proposal. At that point, obviously, we've got to ask for the business. The number of salespeople I've seen not pick up the business that should be theirs just simply because they haven't been bothered to ask for it. It's time of that number. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So we're going to do that close. We're going to ask for the business. Now, there are loads and loads of different closes, okay? The good news is I'm not going to teach you a single one of them today. I'm not going to mention them. It's a bit odd, isn't it? But on the other hand, do you like being closed? Do you like being strong-armed closed? Probably not. But anyway, right. But still, we're going to try that close anyway. And at that point, we typically don't get a yes. We don't even get a no. We get a maybe, or a we'll come back to you, or not entirely sure that price is right, or we're looking at alternatives. So we've now got to handle those objections, haven't we? We've got to really say, well, what sort of things are not quite right? What would you need to do on the price? And what sort of things are you looking for when you're looking at our competitors? And they'll tell us all of that, and then we'll try and handle all of that, and we'll do some sort of close attempt again on top of that. And again, will be some more stalls and some more objections, and then they go quiet. So because we've agreed we're going to follow up, and then we follow up, and then we follow up. And that typically is the sales process. That's how it works, right? One of our organizations typically, no, not yours, by the way, nobody on watching this, I take that, I understand that. You're way better than this. However, when I have spoken to some organizations and I've asked them, well, what is their sales closing ratio from sensible looking prospect through to actual client? And they typically tell me it's something like 10%, 1 in 10, something like that. If it's really, really, really qualified, it's maybe like 1 in 5, something like that. Okay, so that's the way it works, right? You've got to speak to all of these people, and eventually some of them will become clients. 9 out of 10 don't, but still, we do get business. So is there anything particularly wrong with that particular process? Oh, I don't know. It just looks like a lot of hard work, and it's kind of out of date, and I don't know. Well, let's have a look at the other side. Let's look at the buyer side. What is the typical buyer's process? The typical buyer, well, and I did say, didn't I, that I have actually been a buyer, so I'm allowed to be critical about buyers. I used to buy advertising in financial publications on behalf of big financial institutions. Okay, so the very first thing that I had to make sure I did with this salesperson that came in from the financial publication was to express interest, right? To really appreciate that I understood the value of what it is they were trying to sell to me, make them really understand that there may well be an awful lot of business if they could do a good deal for us. Or, funny enough, I might do the opposite. I might actually tell them what a complete load of I thought their magazine was, and they're going to have to work flipping hard on price in order if they're going to get any business, because my client wasn't exactly impressed with their particular publication, but we would see what we could do for them. Either way, we're going to do something about interest. We're going to be a little bit coy about our real level of interest at this point.
If I can ask a very quick question there, Paul.
Please do.
Similar situations as you may have been in. So you talk about sort of being a buyer, but also on the other side of the desk as a salesperson.
Yeah.
At the moment, as a salesperson, what in your view is, I guess you could sort of qualify it as a good expression of interest? What qualifies as, yes, you know what, I think this is going to be a real good quality lead?
How would I identify that? We'll actually come on to that. You're absolutely right. At the moment, your question is perfect. As in, I don't know. I mean, given that the normal sales process, who knows? Who knows? And that's what the buyer's playing on, right? The buyer actually wants to keep everything very vague, deliberately. So they're going to act motivated. They're going to get really, really, you know, say, well, yeah, I really do need this information because there's a very good chance that you're going to get some business here if you work with us. So they're going to get all the information they possibly can at this stage. Things like all the features and benefits, and most importantly, if at all possible, price. We really want to make sure we've got that price, so that we, let's think about why they want that price. But certainly at this point, we're going to avoid any commitment. Now, the reason why we're not going to admit what we're going to do is because, well, that price thing, let's go back to that now. I probably want to compare the price with competitors. Now, if I was really open to the potentials, you know, to the salesperson, that's what I was going to do, the salesperson isn't going to spill the beans, right? They're not going to say, right, this is, they're going to go, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not going to give you the crown jewels, including price, for then you to go and shop me against the competitors or the incumbent. But they managed to do this smoke and mirrors thing, so that they've got all the information anyway without actually committing to anything. And once they've done that piece of magic, they then disappear in a puff of blue smoke and disappear, never to be seen again.
Does it matter who's asking the question when it comes to sort of price obtaining information, whether it's a senior decision maker or somewhere lower down the chain?
It really doesn't matter at all. I mean, senior decision makers, they are definitely the right people for us to be talking to. I agree with you, but they are, let's put it this way. Having been a buyer and actually been trained at the knee, as it were, of some really, really good buyers, if I didn't do this, I would be in trouble, right? And so even a senior decision maker, if he doesn't go through this and he goes to the boss man, the CEO, the MD, and he hasn't done this, then he's in trouble. So, well, hang on a minute, you've just given away all the negotiation power. Why did you give him some sort of commitment or some sort of real understanding as to how likely this is? Because we know full well we're not actually going to buy from them anyway. Do you remember? I mean, only 1 in 5 at best times we're actually going to buy from them anyway. Yeah. So this is the typical buyer process that they have to go through, and probably explains the way I'm talking why I find it really, really hard being a buyer, because I empathize too much on the sales side. Having said that, I don't know. This is actually being done to us, even by our clients, even the people who like us, even the people who are doing business with us right now are still doing this. And the reason why they're still doing it is because they still need to get all the information they possibly can, and still avoid commitment, and take the salesperson gently through this. Well, beyond this point, it's just a dance. So we actually have a look at the dance, and we put those two systems together. You'll see what I mean. Move that forward. Putting the two together with a buyer-seller dance, we are getting the buyer expressing interest and acting motivated, obtaining information, avoiding commitment and disappearing, an educated buyer. Meanwhile, we're doing a needs analysis, presenting a proposal, trying to close, handling objections and following up, and we end up being a frustrated salesperson. Who's leading the buyer-seller dance? Who's leading? The answer has got to be the buyer every time. And what happens when the buyer is in control? I mean, some people might say, well, the buyer wins. But I'm going to say to you, really? Has the buyer won? Well, for starters, we know we've lost, right? Typically we've lost in this buyer-seller dance because we're not in control. 4 out of 5 times, 9 out of 10 times we haven't won the business, so we've lost. On the other hand, the buyer's also lost. And the reason I can say that is because they have not chosen the right answer. Now, we know what the right answer is. It's the stuff that we came in with. In actual fact, I'm sure you've seen this many times. I certainly have. You think, well, why did that organization, that buyer, decide to use that particular solution for that particular problem? Because it's an awful solution. It's too expensive for what it might look cheap on short term, but longer term, that's just going to mean so much more problems, so much more cost going down further down the line. It's going to go out of date, obsolete in no time at all. What on earth possessed them to purchase that solution? Have you been there? I certainly have. So in other words, the buyer has not won either. And the reason why the buyer hasn't won is because, let's be honest, they're not an expert in whatever it is you do. You are. So we can't allow them to be entirely in control. It doesn't. Now, it's always going to be their decision, by the way. I mean, it's their decision to do what it is they want. It's their money, it's their decision. But to be entirely in control of the process isn't actually in their interests either. Now, they think it is because they desperately want to become a mini expert in your thing. But how much time and effort have you put into being you, the expert you? They can't possibly be the expert in absolutely everything. They can't be you. So I'm going to gently suggest that if we allow the buyer to be in control, we're not doing them a favor either. It's a bit like kids. Is it good that children have all the sweets that they want? Well, no, they think they might be winning, but they're not. Okay, so how can we change that? Let's have a look at the Sandler selling system. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I appreciate that, that there's quite a lot of other things we need to be looking at. But if I can just zip through this, and then if there's any questions from anybody, either now or in the future, very happy to talk about it. It's a 7-step process. Oh, first of all, it's a process. So it's not a wing it process of just asking some questions and doing a presentation and doing a close. That's not it. We're going to do some very, very scientific looking bonding and rapport for starters. Now, you might say to me, hang on a minute, Paul, we would have done the bonding and rapport anyway. We do not need to be told by you, we need to do bonding and rapport. But what I would say is, so I can leave that for a second, thank you. We do need that bonding and rapport to be much more scientific maybe than perhaps we are used to, in the sense of if we can understand who we are and very importantly, what kind of personality the person I'm trying to sell to is, we can then match that. We can actually then say, hang on a second, for example, salespeople, no, not you, I understand that, but a typical salesperson that's sent to an organization tends to be very, very enthusiastic and very, very hyper, and typically a decision maker is either what we call dominant and needs everything short and sharp, or is kind of that gentle, meek and sensible, process-driven, technical person. Typically one or the other. And there's one thing that's absolutely sure. They hate the salesperson type of personality. One finds them absolutely just so weak and wishy-washy it's untrue, and the other one finds them absolutely like headache making. So we have to bear in mind that we have to leave our own behavior style to one side and be a little bit more like the person that we're trying to help. So once we've done that bonding and rapport bit, we can then really set down the ground rules, and this is the game changer, I would suggest, where we actually work out together now. This has got to be mutually agreed before the meeting's even started, ideally. When the meeting's being set up, we're going to work out what's the purpose of this meeting, and what's going to happen in the middle of the meeting, and very important, what's going to happen at the end of the meeting. And if you think about it, if everybody knows what's going to happen beginning, middle, and end of the meeting, including the worst kind of questions that might happen, the pressure has suddenly disappeared. It suddenly disappeared on both the buyer and also ourselves when we're trying to help them buy something from us. So we're going to find out what their agenda is, what is it they actually want from the meeting, and also I'm going to tell them all of the questions that I'm going to ask, all the difficult questions. And the difficult questions are going to be around the challenges that they face, their pain. We're going to find out what is their commitment to actually spending time, money, and resources to actually fixing this, and also how that would make that decision. What is the process they would need to go through internally to be able to even buy from me? And I'm going to tell them all those questions up front. But very importantly, I'm going to work out with them what, assuming, well, when we get to the end, assuming you don't like what you see, what's the outcome? Well, the obvious outcome is going to be, well, no. If it's not a good fit, either we've decided we can't help them or they realize that we can't help them. We've got to help both sides to be able to be really, really adult and honest and say, look, there isn't a fit. That's fine. So no, it's a very, very good outcome after all. We don't want to be spending time talking to people who don't want to be talking to us. So no, or alternatively, a yes. And what is that yes going to look like? It might not be the full order. It might just be to the next step, whatever that might look like. Maybe just another conversation. But they know then the worst that's going to happen is an agreement to another conversation with somebody else in the decision cycle. Well, that's fine. So the pressure's off. Okay, so we now know that what is where we're aiming at, and funny enough, we'll actually get there. Now everybody knows where we're aiming. We will get there. And the first lot of questions we did say we were going to ask them about was the challenges they've got. And we're going to look at their pain not only from the point of view of the business problem that they've got, but also how that's affecting them personally. What's the emotional input to them? And I don't know about you, but I've certainly come to the conclusion that everything is bought for an emotional reason. It's got to be rationalized out, but unless there's an emotional reason for doing it, it's going to do anything. It's like, oh, it's just too much like hard work. Let's just leave it as it is.
Would there not be an opportunity to perhaps think about sort of when it comes to the prospecting or the qualification process, identifying the pains, the problems and the issues that they may have earlier on rather than sort of prior to the contract, prior to the meeting?
Absolutely. I mean, there'll be no point in actually having the meeting unless we've got some indication that they've got a problem that we might be able to fix. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. But what we're now talking about is going way deeper than that, not just that superficial problem that they've come to us originally with, but what's the real underlying reasons for that problem. And also, even below that, even deeper than that, the so what to them personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So unless there is a so what to them personally, it stays an intellectual interest. And if it's intellectual interest, I'm not saying you're not going to get the business, but it's a heck of a lot harder. But if we've understood, you know what, if this thing gets fixed, it means that I'm in line for promotion. Oh, if this thing gets fixed, it means my business manages to survive this particular environment, and we can actually be in a good place to really, really come out of the gates hard and fast when it comes to normality returning. Oh, hang on a minute. So what does that mean? Does that mean that therefore you can still retire in the way you intended to? Yeah, that. Huh, okay. But what happens if you don't get these things fixed and you just rely upon your existing revenue stream that's coming in that's been reduced? What happens then? Well, we might even have a business. So wait. So you're saying what, that people's livelihoods are at stake here and your livelihoods at stake here? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Absolutely. Okay, we need them to realize for themselves that this really is important. It's that important. If it's that important, they will make sure something happens. If it's not important, it's going to go way down to the bottom of the importance ladder. There's too much else going on right now. It may or may not be looked at some point in the future, probably never. But if it's something that's absolutely got to happen now, because it's going to help them either immediately now, or they can see that when we get to that next stage in the economy, it's really going to be important, then we can get them to understand why it is they need to do something about it. They understand for themselves why they need to do something about it. That's what we really want to get to. I'm not going to tell them anything. All I'm going to try and get them to do is to, by gentle questions, get them to understand for themselves why it's so important. That's called pain. So if we've got that, it's a lot easier for them to admit what it is they're prepared to do in terms of time and money and change and resources and people and all that good stuff, i.e. budget, in order to fix those things. Now, not necessarily with us, by the way, but you know, if we can get them to understand for themselves what this is going to take, and think, hang on a minute, so I'm going to get this huge good stuff for a relatively small amount of investment. That's an easy equation. Once we've got to that point, we can then help them to understand what it is that they are going to have to do in order to get this thing done. Now that's probably changing quite a lot right now. All of the ways that they thought that they were needing to get authorization, for example, for whatever it is that we're selling, that's probably all gone. All the normal chains and communications are different right now. So we would actually have to work with them to walk through what that would look like. Even in normal times, we'd still want to do that because they probably haven't bought your stuff before, or at least not quite like this, or not for a while, or things have changed since the last time they signed an order for this. So we need to get them to tell us and themselves, how is it that they're going to actually buy? So now you think about it, we've really identified why it is that they want it, and they've identified it for themselves. They know that they have actually got the money and resources to actually buy this thing, and they also can do so. They can actually buy it. They can actually buy the solution. So the question has got to be, well, what's left? And the answer is, well, quite often it's going to be like an order at this stage, isn't it? It's going to be like an agreement to do business, and it's to all intents and purposes, it's closed. The business is done. But of course, there's a huge problem with that. Not a problem necessarily, but there's something for us to be aware of, and that is we haven't really shown them anything yet. We haven't done the proposal for them. We haven't done a demonstration. We haven't done a proof of concept of any description. But that's the ideally natural way of doing things. As I say, we get them to the point where they've closed themselves into wanting to buy it, and then we present. The pressure's really off now. We're not talking about features and benefits of what we do in the hope of persuading them to do something. We can now really home in on purely and utterly the things that are important to this particular decision maker, this particular organization, what it is they need to see, touch, feel, hear, experience in order that they know they've made the right decision. And once we've got that, we can actually, we've actually in effect got that commitment, that finally formal commitment. We can do one last step, that's called post-sale, where we can help make sure we have not bounced them into anything. We're going to help them say no one last time, and also talk them through, walk them through what it would look like when the incumbent comes back, absolutely distraught, trying to win back the business through cutting prices, or what's going to happen when the other vendors that they've been talking to come knocking on the door looking for business. How they're going to gently say, no, they've already decided to go with us. We're going to walk through that and make sure that's absolutely watertight, and then and only then do we know we've got a good client. So what's the difference between the traditional way of selling and Sandler? Well, the first lot, typically the traditional way of doing things is to qualify, then do this wonderful presentation, close, and then do some chasing. Sandler suggests, well, actually, let's spend all our time doing our efforts on qualifying, then close, then present, and don't forget to do some post-sale. I don't know, what's the feeling about what difference that would make? We're finding it's going to make an awful lot of difference, but I'm now being asked more than ever, how does this relate to prospecting? That's all very well for sales. That's when I've actually spoken to somebody. I'm going to say, well, all of those concepts works straight into prospecting, because after all, what is the purpose of prospecting? This is exactly was your question, wasn't it? So,
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Right. Okay. So what is, I got to ask you, what is the purpose of prospecting? It's basically to identify if there is a way we might help. Is there enough of a fit to talk more? So the whole purpose of prospecting is to get a discovery meeting. So in other words, we're not going to try and sell them anything at this stage. There's no point. I mean, we can't. I mean, you can't phone somebody up out of the blue, or through an email out of the blue, or through social media, or whatever it may be, whatever approach we've used, and start selling them stuff, because they're not going to be interested. They didn't expect to get your particular message right now. Thank you very much indeed. They've got so many other things to be worried about right now. The last thing they want to do is to listen to you try and sell them something. That's not it. However, they may well, so can I have that back, sorry, they may well be happy to spend some time just talking about what the situation is and how that might be a reason for speaking at some point. Not necessarily right now, but at some point. The whole purpose of the prospecting is just to identify if there's a way we might help, and then in effect close them to get a discovery meeting. Now those discovery meetings used to be face-to-face, right? Certainly for a while anyway, we're not going to have those face-to-face meetings. They're going to be typically like this, like through some sort of teleconferencing. Now I appreciate that for a lot of people that's a little bit off-putting maybe. They don't like seeing themselves on camera, or they have not really set themselves up very well for doing that, and they're suddenly in a situation where they have to, or maybe that meeting may have to be over the phone. But the difference is not going to be too large, really and truly, but the bonding and rapport is going to be a bit different, isn't it? If you think about it, that stage is going to be different. We're not going to spend quite so much time just chit-chatting about this, that, and everything else, because there isn't that time to be walking across the foyer, the entrance to the office, or going up to their office through the stairs and the lift, and then to be all that nice ritual of the tea and coffee, and all, that's all gone, right? So that time for bonding and rapport, chit-chat, has suddenly disappeared. But that discovery meeting is going to be perhaps looking a bit more business-like in a way, but I'm saying at the same time, don't forget that bonding and rapport. Have some really good bonding and rapport questions ready. And bearing in mind that, that the person that we are now talking to is probably equally ill at ease, shall we say, about having to do all this kind of different way of doing business. But otherwise, other than that, if we're nice and gentle and nurturing and have their best interests at heart, when we reach out to either existing clients or new prospects, and realize that now is the time, the tone we should be thinking about is much more one of being nurturing rather than trying to push things on them. In what way can I help rather than what can I sell you? How and what ways can we be of help to you right now? And maybe we can't, but maybe there's some things that we've been talking about. Then suddenly those discovery meetings will happen. Another thing I'm sure you've already discovered, I certainly am, that the gap between a first communication and a discovery meeting, and between a discovery meeting and the sale, in some instances, has really shortened down. You know, what used to take weeks can now take days. So be aware that business can happen very, very quickly. So moving on.
Just a quick question again before we move on is
yep.
sort of when we come out the back of this, whenever that may be,
yep.
do you think there's much value, or there will be still much value in that sort of precious face-to-face meeting, or is this going to be the new norm?
Sorry, say that again. Do you think there's going to be
once we come out the back of this? You know,
yeah.
I think, you know, I'm sure every business can expect sort of there to be almost a desperation for new sales. Will there be much value in the traditional face-to-face meeting, or is this going to be the new norm?
Do you know what? I think, personally, I think there's going to be a lot more acceptance for this kind of sale. I think what is likely to happen is there might be a large amount of small discovery meetings, online before face-to-face, just to make sure that it really is worth our while meeting. So it might be that there's an extra step, as I say, from the initial prospecting call to, hey, let's have a 10-15 minute catch up via Zoom or whatever it else may be, just to make sure it's worth our while, spending some proper time in our diary. What do you think? And then starting to have a little bit more in-depth discussion about the kind of problem that they might have, the kind of pain they might have, at which point we can then say, actually, oh, hang on a minute, this is actually worth getting in the car for. One or other is going to meet, one office or the other, let's do this. So the commitment level is going to be so much higher when we actually then finally do meet. That's what I suspect is going to happen. But to answer your question, I think an awful lot more sales is going to naturally happen this way anyway. Yes, I agree with you. But having said, it's going to be pretty much the same. At the same time, we are going to miss an awful lot of the cues for body language, right? You know, if we're not face to face. So we will want to get back to that. But at the same time, I think, yes, you're right. An awful lot of business will be done this way.
Then I guess we'll have to become better listeners, will we not? If we're not meeting so often face to face.
Well, if you think about it, in the world of sales, we should be excellent listeners anyway. In fact, we would maintain that ideally you should be doing 70% listening and only 30% talking anyway. So this whole idea of trying to do a big long presentation pitch thing is not helpful. Really and truly, we should be spending all our time, I say all our time, it feels like it though, all our time posing good questions and listening to the answers. So yes, to answer your question. And to answer your question, I think that this whole period right now, this whole new environment is making us be much more precise about all the things we should be doing. We know we should be asking more questions. We have to now. We know we should be doing more listening. We have to now. We know that we should not be spending time with people who don't want to do business with us. We've got to do that even more now. And we know that people do not like to be jumped on to be sold to. And we've got to do that even more now. We've got to be much more caring and understanding and empathetic and listening. But at the same time, we also know we've got to be more in control of what's going on as well. So yes, we're going to be an awful lot better salespeople, I think, because we have to be. Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
So one of the questions I was asked to have a quick look at as well is, well, it's all very well, Paul, all the sales stuff. Yeah, got it. Got a new world for sales. Yeah, and you're going to say yes, but so the Sandler way of thinking kind of fits kind of nicely with where we're in, right? But still, the world has changed an awful lot. Everything is being done remotely, not only the sales, but also the relationship that we've got with our people internally. That's also changed. How on earth do we do that? How do we keep people motivated? How do we get people accountable? Because let's be honest, salespeople, if you're a salesperson or a commercial team member, don't take this the wrong way, but what I'm hearing is for a lot of senior directors and managers of an awful lot of organizations, probably not yours, are very concerned that maybe their teams are sitting at home watching Homes Under the Hammer rather than doing the things they're supposed to be doing, rather than doing that awful P-word prospecting. Because after all, apparently it's an awful lot harder right now. I'm not sure that it is, but anyway, that's their concern, that because they can't see you, right? They haven't got you in front of them, and they feel that they're out of control, or more importantly, you're out of control. So if you are a manager actually, and you're thinking, well, yeah, that's absolutely true, I am a bit concerned that may be happening, or indeed if you're on the receiving end, thinking, well, that's not even true. I am doing my damn. Have you seen what I'm trying to cope with here at the same time with everybody here, and trying to find a corner of the place to do my work? And it's like, I'm doing my best. The answer is going to have to come down to communication. Communication is key. So this is our suggestion. Hopefully this will help clear the logjam a little bit. At the beginning of the day, If you're managing people, if you've got people reporting to you, this is not just sales, this is any team. Ask them at the beginning of the day, just have either as a huddle, but I'd actually prefer, I'd strongly suggest a one-to-one conversation. I'll come to why one-to-one conversation in a second, but certainly asking each individual in your team, what are they committing to doing today? Now, by the way, you might be your only person in the team, right? You might be managing you, and this still holds true. So ask your salesperson or your team member, what are you committing to doing today? And what help do you need? And from whom? So that should be just a 5-minute conversation. That's it, just that, nothing else. If they do actually need help with coaching or more resources, that is then going to be booked into the diary for later on in the day, because you need to go through all the team members, one after the other. Now, why am I suggesting maybe not doing this as a huddle? Huddle's good. Huddle's good. We all need to feel part of the team, but my suggestion for doing it individually, one after the other, is that because you're probably talking to completely different kinds of personality. There are some people who are really open to putting a hand up and doing their stuff, but others are much quieter. Others are much less keen, shall we say, to put themselves forward. And that's not a good place for them to suddenly feel uncomfortable amongst these other people when they're being quizzed and asked what they're going to be doing. Other people are very, very good at being very, very vague about what it is they're going to be doing, and their boss needs to be kind of rather harsh on those folk to be clear, to be just, I don't mind what it is, just level up with me. What is it you're going to be doing today? And other members of the team don't necessarily want to hear that, or don't need to hear that. So I'm going to suggest individual meetings with each member of your reports, right? So hang on a minute, if you're a managing director, you've got 56 people reporting to you. I don't mean you do all 56. You've got managers, right? You get them to do that. But the managers do that with you, right? So you've probably only got a handful of conversations to have each day at the beginning of the day. And at the end of the day, ideally, you want to do the end of the book, the other end of the bookends. You want to ask them, what did you achieve? What went well? And what didn't go so well? So we can make sure that we're in a better place for tomorrow. So there you go. That's what I would suggest. If you're talking about how to get more business remotely, that's what it is. We've got to be much more professional in the way that we're actually doing our selling, and be much more professional, shall I say, when it comes to keeping our teams accountable and keeping ourselves accountable, and then also getting very, very good at being the coach as well. So that's what I have to say. If anybody that wants to have more information about what it is we do, yes, any questions? Do we have any questions?
Yes, any questions? Thank you very much for that, Paul. Anyone out there got any questions? You can ask them now. Alternatively, you can contact Paul directly. He's on various social media channels.
P Glynn, Glynn at Sandler.com.
But okay, stunned silence, Paul. I think you've stunned silence. Amazing, yeah. Everyone's stunned by the amazing thing. Cool. Back to the drawing board, I think. I do have a couple of questions you don't mind sort of answering.
Sure.
Going right back to I think it's one of the very first slides. You talked about businesses don't like being sold to as soon as a decision maker or a business sees the name salesperson.
Yep.
They sort of go back. Is there much power in a title when it comes to being in a sales position?
I don't. What I was referring to there is, it doesn't matter what it says in your business card. If you come across even in the slightest bit like a salesperson, you're put into that category. Mm-hmm. It could be that you're the business owner, right? But if you come across in any shape or form like a salesperson, you are put into that pot as being slimy, untrustworthy, over the top, phony salesperson. You're not, but you're automatically tarred with that brush. So to answer your question, I don't think it doesn't matter what it says on your business card. Really, it's just a question of the reason why we don't want to put salesperson on our business cards, because it makes it too flippant obvious, isn't it?
Yep.
But they'll know. They'll know immediately. You know where we're coming from as soon as we open our mouths. As soon as we're on the phone to them at a prospecting call, they can smell a salesperson a mile away. So we mustn't be that.
Wonderful, thanks. Another question. You talked about the sort of Sandler rules. I think you mentioned there's over 200 plus rules. Yep. Number 27 you mentioned. Yep. Could you sort of share, I guess this might lead on to the next question, sort of one thing, if you could only do one thing within this sort of interesting period of time that we are in, being a salesperson or a sales manager, what is that one thing? And could you perhaps relate it back to another rule?
Definitely I would say Sandler Rule number 3, no mutual mystification. That's to say, if we have really good upfront contracts, if we are setting the ground rules for every single meeting, both internal and external, that's the one thing that everyone that starts working with us says it's the game changer, the transformation.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Paul. Again, any questions? If you don't want to ask them now, feel free to contact Paul directly. That's the end of the webinar. Thank you very much for that, Paul. Brilliant. Just from those information for those listening, the Chamber continues runs a lot more webinars. We're here for you. We're trying to help you through this interesting period. Upcoming webinars. So for those of you who are listening are involved in any sort of international trade, we have a webinar taking place tomorrow, Wednesday, 15th of April, looking at how to use our online electronic platform, EZ-Cert, to complete and submit your export documentation. Tuesday, 21st of April, we have Michael Page, who will be talking about recruitment, whether that be recruiting now or perhaps once we come out the other end of this, who knows what's going to happen. 22nd of April in the morning, you've got a nice sort of dual show for you, one after the other here. 10 a.m. we're looking at sort of search engine optimizations for local businesses, and then straight after we have formative content. We'll be talking about powerful business-to-business content. A lot more information can be found on our website, www.thamesvalleychamber.co.uk. And finally, of course, the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce, we are here for you. We're going to try and help you guide through these interesting times. And obviously, we are, I guess, with our friends at the British Chamber of Commerce working tirelessly to help your businesses on the front line. We're going to try and be, I guess, the sort of first responders on the ground for your business and the community. So we have launched the Business Continuity Toolkit aimed at ensuring that you have the right access to information on a single portal. So again, all the information that you need is updated regularly on our website daily, thamesvalleychamber.co.uk. Again, thank you very much to our colleague Paul. Much appreciated.
One little quick ad. Can I do one little quick ad? Is that right?
By all means, go for it, Paul.
Those people that perhaps have got a bit of time that they didn't necessarily expect before this lockdown happened, I'm running an intensive 2-week course to get through to bronze certification, which is a proper qualified sales qualification. Do contact me for that. I'm making it as relatively inexpensive as possible, so you can get your furloughed staff on this too.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Again, if anyone wants to contact Paul, you can contact him directly. Our details on the website. This webinar will also be uploaded onto social media channels later on YouTube, so please check it out. And again, look forward to hopefully seeing some of you, if not all of you, on our next webinars. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good. Okay, was that all right?
I think that went well, actually. Let me just...
How many people